For great ideas and practical tools you can start using tomorrow to grow your business and separate you from the competition, you've come to the right place. If you're into B2B marketing and sales, then welcome to the one and only B2B Marketing and Sales Podcast. With over 60 and counting total years in the trenches of businesses small and large, they have a plethora of knowledge and experience that generate you more leads, capture more clients, ring up more sales. Well, doggone it, just make you more money. How about that? Always thought-provoking, yet dubiously entertaining. Please welcome to their respective microphones across 3 time zones, your co-ringmasters, the Dave Loomis, and not the rock star, Steve Miller.
We're starting. So welcome everybody to the B2B Marketing and Sales Podcast with Dave Loomis. I'm not with my famous co-host, Steve Miller, today. I'm solo with a very, very special guest. I'm with Megan Spinos, and Megan has such an interesting perspective on things that I think everybody will really, really enjoy hearing. Let me just tell you a little bit about Megan before we say hello. So Megan, for the last many years, has been with an amazing architecture firm called Vocon, which is based in Cleveland and New York City, that does a lot of corporate work. And because this is the B2B podcast, a lot of B2B companies, corporate headquarters of lots of Fortune 500 companies that you name, big consulting firms, you name it, banks, etc. And Megan is going to be going to Deloitte in a very similar capacity within just a couple weeks of the time of this recording. So by the time you're listening to this, she's probably already going to be at Deloitte. So technically right now, she's a principal at Vocon and a strategy director, also sort of called workplace strategy. And at Deloitte, she's going to be a senior manager in their area called workplace design. And what's really interesting, maybe a lot of you that are listening don't know that there is such a field, but there is. People think a lot about this, and we're going to have a lot of questions about it. But Megan, welcome.
Thanks. I'm so excited to join you. This was awesome. We had pleasure working together for a little bit, and I got invited. This is cool. Really excited to hear more about this. And I think people, we'll build some bridges for people so that they can make a connection between what they do and, some of the things that you think about. And I think maybe people, after hearing this, maybe walk around their office, if they go to an office and they'll think differently, hopefully, about a few things. So I'm going to start very broadly because I want to make sure everybody understands sort of what exactly this field is. But how would you describe workplace strategy or workplace design, whatever you want to label it? Great question. And I think what's helpful to know is that in the field of design, you have people that might focus on residential, and you have people that focus on healthcare. And our passion, I guess, has been corporate interior design. So workplace design and workplace strategy, which I didn't know was a field until I got into it, is really it's how designers and architects connect people to the spaces that they create with purpose. It's a practice, I would say, on the simple side, of putting employee performance at the center of planning and design, while also meeting the goals and the needs of an organization. So before we even start to pick colors and finishes and furniture and all of that stuff, it really aims to understand how people work and how the physical environment can support and enhance people's performance. So it's putting a lot of mission and purpose behind the planning and design of a workplace, because those spaces have to do a lot. They're really hardworking. They have to support well-being. We have to help people work creatively. We have to connect people. We have to do all of those things, ever more compounded in the era of hybrid work that we're in. And so even before the pandemic, I just appreciated the thoughtfulness of how our firm would be able to meet our clients, so usually business clients at that time, and still now, where they are in achieving all of these goals. Because real estate is the second largest investment, as we all know, behind talent. So we wanted to help our clients long ago make that investment really tangible, really valuable. And now it's even more important, than ever, because we know we can work anywhere.
Yeah, that's so fascinating. Well, one thing that popped into my head as you were talking is that in marketing, we talk about not putting the cart before the horse. So in many instances, a lot of the people that, listen to this podcast are in marketing, and people come to them, whether they're an internal department or an agency or what have you, and say, I want this. I want a new website. I want a new logo. I want this. And, usually when we talk about, like, okay, where do you want to go? Or where are we? Where do you want to go? How do we get there? So it's like really more about strategy. And it's like sort of a timeout. Why do you want a new logo? Why do you want a new, and it probably is the same with you. So, clients maybe come to the table and think they know what they want. And maybe you're saying, time out. Let's talk about this and because you said how people work, putting performance at the center of design, connecting people to the spaces with purpose. Those are really, really cool things. Can you say more about this, like sort of how important upfront strategy is?
It really is. And I feel like, so first of all, to level set, our partners on this journey inside of an organization include marketing, they include HR, they include technology teams, they include operations teams. So all of those pieces are so vital to the story that we're trying to tell in the physical space. So our process, much like I think any strategy process inside of a marketing function of any sort, starts with discovery and establishing what is the vision. Why are we doing this project? You might get an answer of like, well, our lease is up, or something. But when you peel the onion away, there's always something really great that the organization is trying to communicate, trying to convey, trying to connect inside this renovation that they're doing, or new building, or, you fill in the blank there. And more, I would say, especially coming out of the pandemic, all of those goals and objectives are linked. We have to communicate, the importance of, like, why is marketing important to physical space? Well, you're communicating outwardly to the public about who you are and what your values are, but it is equally as important to communicate that to your employees so that they are the brand ambassador for your organization. And a lot of times those elements that are so important to share with the outside world become fodder for the interiors as well. And making that why we're coming back to the office, or why even come together when we can work anywhere, is even more important. You have a whole contingency of employees that want to work for an organization that is solid in its mission and values and knows what its purpose is. And we need marketing to help understand what that is and make it sing in the physical space. In a field, so while you're learning about workplace strategy, I'm going to teach you about experiential brand, which is how you build an emotional connection to the physical space through architecture and design. So it's taking a lot of those cues and then helping that story really sing in the physical space, which makes for such a dynamic experience and really makes the workplace, we hope, a destination for all the great things that we're trying to do to get to know each other, connect with one another, collaborate, innovate, solve problems, etc.
That's fascinating. Can you give an example of, like, sort of how an experiential brand like that strategy manifests itself in a space that might be maybe surprising to people? Or
it's just another dimension of the creative team when we come forward. And so, some entities, if you don't work with a firm like Vocon, may have pieces and parts of it outside of the architecture and design realm. We happen to have it embedded inside of our studio. And it's a team of graphic designers, environmental designers that link in with the project team, link in with strategy, to understand what is the story that we're trying to tell in the physical space. And then we make that come to life. So for example, in our Vocon's workplace, we have big murals that will say, love your work and crush it every day. And a sort of a graphic design approach to the physical space that reflect our values and the things that we say all the time and the things that are really important to us. And so for a client, I'll use Sherwin-Williams, very public project that we're really grateful to be a part of. Our experiential brand team is 100% dedicated to helping Sherwin-Williams tell their story of color throughout the physical environment. And so that is sort of a specialty inside the interiors world that has a whole nother lens and focus, helps with wayfinding and signage, but also helps communicate the story throughout the building in lots and lots of creative ways, which is really cool. It's really fascinating function that my daughter is actually really looking at and getting her career going.
That's great. So for people that are, listening, that are young in their careers, there are some really interesting emerging fields like that that you might not think about. Yeah. And I also think that, we think about B2B companies. Of course, Sherwin-Williams is a great example of that. They're a consumer brand, but there's many aspects of B2B aspects to that and other coatings companies like Sherwin-Williams. And they're not just like old stodgy companies that are sort of like in, labs, with no color and people in white coats running around. There's branding and there's marketing. I like to say marketing is everything we do, but it kind of is.
The cool thing about the Sherwin story is that we are helping to reveal all of the other, people think of them as paint companies, a coatings company, but there's an immense amount of B2B work that they do. There's so much to the brand that is so much that people don't really see or really understand. And so it's been a real joy to kind of reveal those stories and help them use the physical space to tell that story to the public, to new hires, to their employees, to really be a beacon for that brand experience on a regular basis. But it's not only with companies that sell a physical product. We do a lot of that work with knowledge workers, with those that do professional services. Every organization has a story to tell. And the great challenge and the fun challenge, I would say, is one, revealing that special sauce that my boss, Deb Donnelly, likes to talk about. Understanding that by the time this podcast airs, it will be a new boss, but we are back in this transition time and working very closely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But that every organization has a story to tell, and it's the great creative way to figure out how to do that is the awesome power of our work.
Yeah. When I just mentioned marketing is everything we do, one of the debates that's going on right now has to do with work at home versus work in the office.
Yeah.
And it's this debate on lots of different levels, which I find fascinating, and it affects all of us that work in B2B and in marketing and whatever you work in. And I guess I would ask you a couple questions. One is, where do you see this settling out?
Yeah.
When you have people like Jamie Dimon on one hand, from Chase, who's gone back and forth multiple times, putting fist or foot down or whatever, but then, not really. Or we got an Elon Musk who, has come out and said, actually brought up the fact that it's not fair for white collar workers to work at home when factory workers have to work in person.
Yeah. I think that's a tough one, because I think it's sort of what we were speaking as we got started. Jobs have such diversity. Not every role is the same. And so I think why you've had a lot of kind of going back and forth is because when we knew this early on, we had a huge transformation to how we work. How we work catastrophically was uprooted and changed. And so I think there's been this fundamental nature. One, we innovated like crazy and we figured it out, which is, I'm so proud of us for doing that. But the fundamental nature of how we work changed forever. And it's probably not going back. But it also took time to settle. And I think you needed to see, now that we're officially out of the pandemic, you needed time to see what we missed by being apart? What did we learn and what did we gain? And, the flexibility, I think, was immensely beneficial and rewarding. But what we're seeing is this need to this desire, I would say, anything that you have to force someone to do is a little bit tough. That's always going to land a little rough with people. But I think in general, and our survey work shows this all over the country, you're seeing this sort of research come forward, is that most people want to have some presence. They like connecting with their peers. They want to have access to mentorship and learning opportunities. And young people especially are wanting the best of both. They want the flexibility, but they really want to be in the office on a regular basis. They do not like working in their bedrooms and basements and whatever. That being said, you also have to respect that you have a whole contingency of people that are needing that flexibility right now and are taking care of family relationships and kids and things like that. So I think we're going to have a greater degree of sensitivity to meet people where they are, while also driving just a better value of what the workplace needs to be. We have got to do a better job of creating a really valuable destination that supports people, supports connection, supports collaboration. I think a lot of times we're seeing sort of going, we've got all this workspace. What are we going to do with it? Well, we're going to right size it. We may not need as much space as we had before. And obviously every organization is a little bit different, but the experience that we're creating is now the new buzzword of what is the workplace experience that we're creating in this hybrid work era that is really valuable. And so that is the deep work that we're doing now to say, what are the priorities? We don't have to be everything to everybody, but if you have an organization that is largely remote, but bringing people together on quarterly basis, and those moments are really impactful because the team is hunkering down for a week at a time. Well, that's the space that we're going to create. If it's, we're going to be here probably 3 days a week. So let's create one with more presence and more kind of a little more traditional of what we're used to. Well, that's what we're going to create. So every organization is doing kind of their own exploration into this. And I think that's sort of follow the leader mentality that we've had over the last couple of years to say, what are you doing? Well, what are you doing? We've learned all of that, but now we're kind of setting forth on our own authentic path. But it's definitely leaning towards, we really miss being together, and let's get together purposefully with intention, in a thoughtful way. I think that's what's
right. So I guess what you're saying is, we want to avoid situations where we say, oh, okay, you need to be in the office a certain amount of days. And then the person ends up going in and sitting in a cubicle or their office or at their desk, not interacting with anybody and doing the exact same thing that they would have been doing at home, but they just happen to be at the office because someone said you had to be there, versus, you're going to come in, but then that's going to be time well spent because there are special interactive meetings that are happening that you can't do or are better in person. And you are getting that, the benefit of that. So being with purpose, like you say.
Yeah. The why, the why behind the office is now more critical than ever. And that's the challenge. I mean, those are the environments that we're creating. Those that really do a bang up job of giving people a great experience. It involves wellness elements. It involves food and beverage. It involves fitness. It involves lots of these additional bookends that support people, not just to say, hey, look at the fancy things we're going to give you when you come to the office, but to say, while you're here, we want it to be a really great experience. We know you have a choice. Let's make it worthwhile. Let's support you while you're here. And we know our New York teams, say this all the time, the commute, not as much in Cleveland, the commute can be a real bear, and the cost of parking. You're weighing all of that. Those are the costs of working now, not just the cost of going to work. And so we have to take all of that into consideration. You're seeing a lot more core days where you have teams that are coming in on everybody's really there, like on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, something like that, so that there is more coordination, or there's more choreography behind, what they're doing. A little bit more thoughtful about that.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Now, you started your career in corporate communications. Is that right? Mm-hmm. You were worked in editorial, and then also at maybe First Energy or something. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. So what from the time in corporate communications, you think about what you learned and what it was like then and what it might be now, kind of. How important is that role and proper communication within companies about all of what's going on?
I think, okay, we all of us, every organization gets dinged for not communicating enough. I don't think there's ever enough communication that can happen.
Right.
But I think my time in that world gave me an appreciation for sort of understanding where a business is coming from when they're looking to accomplish any sort of goal, that it's about how you message that, about how you share those goals and objectives, and then you bring people along in the process. So I think probably one of the biggest takeaways for me in that time, was evolving this appreciation for not only engaging people into the process, because when they're invited in, and we do a lot of employee engagement in our work, we don't just have 2 or 3 people deciding what the evolution of the design is going to be. We invite people into that process, but then we really focus on change management, guiding people through. Not everybody is like loving, a whole new office experience. So you've really got to, one, invite them into the process, really listen to them, understand what is motivating them, and then bringing them along in that transformation and saying, hey, you're really part of this. We're going to do it this way. And isn't that great that you were part of this process, and building those change champions throughout the organization. So it's essential to every facet of an organization, but especially when you're doing workplace transformation, it couldn't be more critical, because if they are buying in all along the way and they feel that they know what's coming, how they can use those spaces, how these new behaviors can come forward, you're hopefully doing the right thing by getting them get excited about the transformation before they actually move in.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. That is fascinating. Obviously I'm in marketing, so I value communications for sure. Just pivoting a little bit, or as my podcast co-host, he doesn't care for the word pivot, so he's a little iconoclastic, so he uses the word pirouette, just because it's different.
Okay.
So I'm not going to physically turn around, but if a listener or anybody says, really cool, corporate spaces that are going to inspire me as a marketer. And, I had a friend that was the CFO at Nike, right, in Beaverton, Oregon, or whatever. Yeah. And you kind of like, in your brain, it's like tempting to jump to a consumer brand that's cool, right? And it's like, wow, I want to work there, or if I had a friend actually who designed like Cards Against Humanity's space in Chicago, and it just very fun, and, all that. And I sometimes think that really hardcore industrial B2B companies, they make like a part for a machine or something like that. They've got to be just boring, and they're people in suits, still in suits, like walking around. And, it's, does it have to be that way?
No, it doesn't. No, it does not. I think what's key to what I found a lot of joy in, one, I'm a very curious person. So my time as a reporter, my time in editorial, I just would, and I love biographies. I ask 100 questions of the people that we're doing projects with on what makes them tick, and what is life like for them, and what is it like to work here, and talk to me about your brand, and talk to me about the history of this. You start to reveal just the most interesting things as you get to know your client. I think a good architect or a good designer is innately curious about your project and who you are. I'm guessing it's the same with marketing. And there's a special nature about every project that you interact with, if you can, frame it from that lens. And it's about bringing forward those special moments. It might not be, we're not really doing a lot of game rooms, and we're not really doing a lot of, ping pong tables and things. But we're finding ways to bring what's special about an organization forward, and also finding ways to allow them to celebrate that, and also celebrate the culture. So when you weave people into that process, there's always something rich and rewarding. And it's our challenge as the design professionals working with our clients to reveal the magic that happens inside those organizations. Because when you get people talking, they're very passionate about their work, and they will tell you things that are just kind of cool. It's cool stuff that you never knew, but that's our obligation to our clients, is to really reveal that and bring that forward, and actually try to know the business. My team doesn't like when I say this, but like, you got to know their business better than they know it themselves. And they're like, I got to be an expert of a welding. You're like, yes,
right. Or yes. I think I think maybe you worked, if we're allowed to, say a brand specifically, the Swagelok.
Yes.
So Swagelok is an Ohio-based company, a global company, very long history of extremely high quality products. And if you just think of a tiny little tube that might be metal tube, let's just say that's part of sort of a big piece of equipment. A swage is sort of a connector that holds these things together. They're in everything from, I don't know, little machines to, or micro machines, even all the way up to, say, like a nuclear power plant.
Undersea rigs, things like that.
Right, undersea rig, you name it. So I can't think of anything that's more sort of industrial and also invisible to the consumer. But you worked on an innovation center. I've been to that innovation center and seen really cool spaces that are, lobbies that, that look like they could be from, a consumer brand company too. And so not boring at all, and really probably inspirational.
Yeah. One of the first questions that we asked them was, what does innovation mean to you? And we had a focus. My clients at this organization will remember this day very well. They have a very beautifully written set of values that they really bring forward in front of the employees regularly. It's embodied all over the place. They had added new kind of revised this, and innovation was on that. And when we brought the question forward, we were like, what does innovation mean to you? And a lot of people that were accounting or business or, operations, they were like, well, that's not a word we're newly integrating this. We're not really feeling that that's our job. That's the engineer's job, and that's the marketing team's job. And that wasn't the organization's intent at all. They wanted everyone to feel that they had the power to innovate and move an idea forward. If you broke it down to what is innovation, it's how do we carry an idea forward and help it evolve. And so it was a really interesting reflection point for us to sort of take a step back and reframe the question, and then do the work to help kind of, sometimes you reveal things that need to be transformed outside of the physical space, but ultimately result in a much more aligned process. So the amazing thing from working with them, and we value that relationship immensely, was helping them to tell their story that they wanted to tell in the physical space, and through this innovation center, connecting the factory, connecting the groups that interacted with that client experience on a regular basis in a very thoughtful way, and in really forward-thinking space that was largely unassigned in a lot of ways. And they were kind of taking a risk in this, simplified standards, didn't have quite as many office sizes, and just kind of a wholesale transformation, and just walking carefully and cautiously through change management and walking through this process, and then seeing, how they've changed on the other side. They're so excited about, how they're able to succeed in that space, because they opened themselves up to the process. They were open to it. And it was really worthwhile, I think, for them in the end.
Yeah, it's fascinating because, now they're using that space for a lot of things. And, when I say marketing is everything we do, so it's everything we do, because obviously we want to sell what we make to our clients and customers and that sort of thing. But also there's employer branding, because we've got to present ourselves as a company where somebody wants to work. And especially in this day and age, when there's a lot of competition for manpower or woman power or whatever, people power. Then, but I've seen that innovation space used for job fairs, where they're attracting, people that are going to be interviewing at that company. And boy, what an amazing front door. I always like to say, think about marketing in general as having somebody over to your house, for dinner. Well, are you just, obviously you have to think about what you're serving for dinner, but don't you clean up? Don't you put on the lighting the way you want, or a candle or music, or, for all the senses? And if you think about 10 years ago, whatever a potential candidate came in to who knows where, probably like the old cafeteria or something, for one of those big things. Yeah. And now they're coming into this beautiful building that says a lot about what the company is.
So much, so important. I would say so many projects started with that sentiment in mind. And I want to hire this top talent. I want to hire people that are really great for our organization, would be a great cultural fit. And I'm kind of embarrassed because this is the space that I'm taking them. I know that this doesn't match who we are. And that is really, that you have a client that's right for something fantastic. But that's where I say it takes marketing, it takes HR, it takes comms, it takes operations. It takes all of these critical partners for us to link arms with and really say, let's build a great experience for them, and carry that forward. It's a famous story. We did the Goodyear headquarters right when I first started. It was my first project inside of the organization. And the famous story was they had this person who flew from Germany, was going to work at Goodyear, flew all the way across the country or across, the pond, as they say. Scientist was going to really work in their R&D, drove up from the airport, probably came from Akron, Canton, and told the driver to take them right back to the airport, that he was, it sounds like a legend. I know it's very true because we heard the story. We heard all about it. Client took the taxi cab driver took him back to the airport. And that was just devastating to that amazing brand. That was like, this can't be. We're such a strong brand, but the space isn't matching who we are and the story we want to tell. And it's repeated over and over. There's such an opportunity to make a better story for that. And that was one of the catalysts for their complete transformation for their headquarters. But,
wow, I love that. And just lastly, when you joined Deloitte in your new role, how, people are thinking, oh, everybody's heard of Deloitte, big consulting firm, and they're going to come in and do, either IT projects or transformation projects or, business strategy, accounting, audits, all sorts of different things. But I'm not sure they think of like how your type of role might tie into a project. How does that work now for them? How will it work? Where will you fit in?
So Deloitte is a very large professional services organization, considered one of the big four. Huge portfolio in the United States, something like 6 million square feet to support their hundreds of thousands of employees. They have about 80 offices across the country. This will be mostly a domestic role, and it's an internal role to help them advance their workplace experience for their own people. So the opportunity came
Got it. Right. So not their client facing necessarily, but really for internal.
Correct.
Right. To optimize, as you said about some of the reasons for performance at center of design, people matching the people to spaces with purpose, that sort of thing.
And also the talent. I think for many organizations, it's about, making the environment support the new talent that's coming forward. And, these organizations are all competing for really strong talent coming out of our colleges and universities, and those that are even more seasoned, in their careers. And you want to reflect your organization in a strong way. Something that is also really important to the organization is reflecting their commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion, sustainability, and a lot of the values that they hold in addition to those, and making those really visible in the physical space and emblematic of the organization that they already are, but want to continue to showcase in the future. That will be.
Wow, that sounds so exciting. We're going to follow that. That's going to be great to hear how that goes. I just we could probably keep on talking, but I mean, I think this is a great place I think people that have listened have a good overview now of kind of what you do, and also the connection between just strategy in general. We do marketing strategy, and we don't want to put the cart before the horse, like we said. And same with workplace strategy. What is the objective? What's the purpose? What do we want? What's the desired outcome? We talk a lot about that. And all the things that you said, when you were talking about your inquiry and discovery. So my area of specialty now has evolved into doing voice of customer interviewing. Yes. And I teach people how to do discovery and how to ask these open-ended questions and how to come up with these gems or patterns or the stories that we can use to propel the company forward. And I think it sounds very, very similar
It is so, there's a
really
lot of crossover. That's why the partnership is so important. And you and I reflected on this so many times, is even the marketing approach is such an important ingredient into us understanding, designers understanding what is the motive, what are the motivations, the feelings, the behaviors that we're trying to evoke in the physical space. It's such an important linkage. And so we're all partners in this space. So it's incredibly rewarding. It's all discovery at the end of the day of who you are and what is really important to you, and what do we share with the world in this space.
That is awesome. Great place to wrap it up. Megan, thank you. What if people heard this and have a question for you or want to connect with you? You're on LinkedIn, I take it?
I'm on LinkedIn. Yep, Megan.
Okay, that's great. So it's Megan Spinos, Spinos, and it'll say in her history, Vocon, VOCON, and now Deloitte. And this has been a real pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us. And this has been the B2B Marketing Sales Podcast. And signing out for now, and we'll see you next time. So long.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the one and only B2B Marketing and Sales Podcast, the source for B2B marketing and sales insight. If you enjoyed the podcast, please be sure to subscribe and leave these old guys a 5-star rating. Check the show notes for any links and contact information. You can always contact us by going to b2bmarketingsalespodcast.com. Thank you, and keep on marketing, keep on selling.